As the academic year commences for public schools on Monday, over 25,000 grade 1 and 8 learners are still not placed at schools across the country. According to information provided by the Department of Basic Education, these learners could be placed as late as the end of March. A further 42 schools in Limpopo and 18 in Mpumalanga were identified as not yet having opened due to storm damage.
Briefing the media on the readiness of schools to reopen on Monday, Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga gave the assurance that schools will start on the 15th of February. While millions of learners will begin school, there are over 25,000 grade 8 and 1 learners that have not yet been placed.
Provinces have made good progress, but there are still more than 16,117 learners that are still awaiting spaces. And that's why, as I say, parents were even calling, Googling, picking up any number and making sure that they press that their kids be allocated to schools or the admissions be confirmed.
While Motshekga continued to encourage parents to honor school fees payments, 2 billion rand will be allocated to teacher posts that are funded by school governing bodies.
The portion of the 7 billion allocated to this program is targeting also at saving SGB funded posts in public schools and government subsidized independent schools. I think we've been allocated more than 2 billion to assist your government subsidized schools and also the SGB funded posts to make sure that schools that are not receiving the usual allocation because of parents who are unable to pay fees, teachers that don't lose their work.
According to the department, school attendance will continue to follow patterns of alternative days or weeks. The department also announced its findings into the matric physics and maths leak investigations.
Based on the evidence that had been collected through the investigation, a recommendation on the basis that the 2020 combined exams were not compromised, which we accepted and we are happy with and presented to the department at large, both at HEDCOM and CM level, to support the fact that we are quite happy with the report and the outcome thereof.
The national matric results will be released on the 23rd of February. Mahlako Komani, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right now, let's continue this conversation now with teacher union Naptosa. Basil. Manuel is the executive director there. He joins us now. So you've heard the report back from the Education Ministry. They've had their own survey, but I believe the teachers' unions had their own. Do they tally, do they correlate to agree with what you heard?
Good afternoon. No, absolutely not. They don't correlate. However, we've got to accept that surveys are static. And of course, things can happen thereafter. And if what the minister has reported, in fact, is completely factual, as presented to her by the provinces, we will be the happiest people around because it says all our schools are compliant and every single thing is in place. That is exactly what we want. As a union, that is all we are asking for.
But just reflecting on what you had reported not so long ago, Mr. Manuel, there was 30% of schools, according to your teacher survey, that weren't ready to open, and that is no small amount. And also, you had said there were too many schools without personal protective equipment. When was the last time you received a report and that reflected this information?
That report was from the 9th of February, which was just now the other day. And that is why we are saying if there has been all this improvement, we'll be happy. But we are doubtful that there has been all the reports from the provinces are exactly factual. In fact, even as the minister was reporting, a school called me to say, but we haven't received this. And what we will do as Naptosa, and of course my colleagues in the other unions will do the same, because we've been in this together and did the research together, is we are going to be monitoring come tomorrow. We're going to strictly look at whether there is compliance or whether some provinces fabricated information and passed on half-truths to the minister. We know that she's reliant on the provinces to give her the information.
No, it's quite intriguing to hear you say that some schools may have fabricated information. What would motivate them to do that? And are you able to share with us which school or which region called you to say they've not received that? Because I know you were quite concerned about schools in KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape.
Yes, not schools fabricating, provinces.
Yes,
because
provinces, yes.
Schools in Pietermaritzburg called me today. And I'm very worried about that, because we don't want to have headbutting about things that everybody knows should be done. And we are going to be checking that that has been done. To claim that all these things have evaporated is maybe a bit of a stretch. However, that is what we'd like to believe, because that is what we've been striving for all along.
Okay. Now, very important information also coming out of this briefing. About 25,000 learners are still to be placed. Now, I'm wondering, with the safety measures in place and the teacher-pupil ratio, is it being taken into account, the plans that have been laid bare now, that you still have 25,000 more to place learners? Will this tip the apple cart?
Well, remember that the provinces that have the problem with placements are the provinces that also have a lot of in-migration. And I sympathize with them. It's very difficult to plan. But of course, simply because we're having this rotational system, you can't over-enroll, because we're not going to have that system forever. If tomorrow or the next day we have a full return to school and you've over-enrolled, what do you do then? So it is something that has to be looked at. We've got to try and find accommodation. Unfortunately, there is accommodation available, but it's not where the parents want it to be. And those are some of the challenges. And the provinces like Gauteng, like the Western Cape, have a major problem with in-migration and, of course, settlement in areas where they haven't planned to have the children. It's not an easy one to solve, but we will be putting our heads together with the departments to solve them. And, of course, to encourage parents, too, to have to make sacrifices. Sometimes it's to travel a little bit of a greater distance because you were not on time the first time around in your application.
I'm also curious about this, Mr. Manuel. I've heard from some parents that they've received timetables which show that some of the classes will still remain to be remote learning. We know from last year already there were many children disadvantaged by this. Does this mean that private schools are still going to be better off? And can the minister honestly say that they are keeping that balance in terms of safety as well as curriculum gaps and health?
One of the issues that we can't run away from is that our schools are overcrowded. And the only way we can manage the COVID issue with social distancing is by having the rotational methods that we are using. So yes, unfortunately, there will be schools where that will lose out on days. And teachers are battling with this because, in fact, they are teaching for each child 50% of the time that they should be teaching. So those children lose out. And of course, the children in the schools that are doing online learning will be benefiting. The question is, what have we learned from this? How are we extending this? And I know the question was asked even to the minister. We know tablets can't be made available to every child, or indeed even data. But what are we taking closer to those areas via churches and mosques and temples? Surely we can do something for the grade 11s at least, because our grade 12s of this year have a mountain to climb. Last year's grade 11 work and this year's grade 12 work. That's why we've got to solve some problem insofar as online learning for our grade 11s of this year.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Mr. Manuel. Basil Manuel is Naptosa, Teacher Union Naptosa's Executive Director. Of course, if you are a parent, a learner, you share with us your views about this. The announcements made earlier on by the Education Minister. Sad news, over 1,000 teachers died from the start of COVID-19. I think about 150 this year, including learners. So it is an uphill battle for the education system. Now on to other news. Coaches of leading operator Greyhound and its subdivision City Liner will not graze the country's roads after today. The